Welcome back to another solo episode of I Don't Think We Talk Enough About. I'm Helen, and today we're diving into a deeply important and often overlooked topic, self-abandonment. This is something many of us experience, but may not even recognise as it's happening. It's that quiet betrayal of ourselves. The moments when we dismiss our feelings, ignore our needs, and shrink ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for us. Today, I'll explore with you what self-abandonment is, how it manifests in our daily lives, and most importantly, how we can begin the journey of coming back home to ourselves. I'll also be answering some of your questions, as well as closing the episode with a very special short meditation to help you reconnect with yourself in a meaningful way. So what is self-abandonment? Well, self-abandonment is best understood, I think, as when we prioritize external validation, approval, or comfort over our own inner truth and needs. It happens when we silence our intuition, betray our boundaries, or neglect our emotional needs for the sake of keeping the peace. We desperately avoid conflict, or we desperately avoid anything that makes us feel worthy. It often stems from childhood experiences, where we learned, explicitly or implicitly, that being ourselves wasn't safe and it wasn't acceptable. Self-abandonment then can happen in so many of the relationships in our life, in our adult life, family, work, and friends. Psychologically, self-abandonment can be best understood, I feel, through the lens of attachment theory and, really importantly, inner child work. I've spoken about inner child work a lot on this podcast. It's an area I feel really strongly about. If we grew up in environments where our emotions weren't validated, we may have learned to suppress them in order to maintain connection with caregivers. We were just trying to survive. Over time, this pattern becomes ingrained, and we continue to leave ourselves behind in relationships, work, and daily interactions. We unconsciously send a message to ourselves and to others that we just don't matter. So for those who experience inconsistent or emotionally unavailable caregivers, may have developed an anxious or avoidant attachment style, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. When we're anxiously attached, we may abandon our own needs to keep others close, fearing rejection or abandonment. When we're avoidantly attached to other people, we can tend to distance ourselves from our emotions, believing that we have to be self-reliant and that this is the only way to stay safe. We daren't rely on other people. In both cases, self-abandonment is a learned survival mechanism, one that may have protected us in childhood, but now keeps us disconnected from ourselves and others as we become adults. And this is where inner child work can come in and help us reconnect with these wounded parts of ourselves by recognizing when we are operating from old wounds rather than our present adult selves. I often work in practice with, is this your younger self speaking here, or is this your adult self? Coming back to that adult self voice in the moment can be incredibly healing and incredibly empowering. When we dismiss our emotions, criticize ourselves harshly, or ignore our intuition, we are often repeating patterns from the past rather than responding to the present moment. Whereas what we need to be doing is responding to the present moment with self-compassion, self-trust. It can be hard when we're coming to this area of work for the first time to recognize old wounds. You might find yourself or catch yourself over apologizing, saying sorry for things that don't really require an apology. This might stem from childhood where you felt responsible for constantly keeping the peace and avoiding conflict with your caregivers. It may play out as people pleasing at work. You might stay late at work, even when you're exhausted, because you fear disappointing your boss or your colleagues. This could be a survival response from childhood where approval was associated with being good. And that is where you got your safety and your love. You may find yourself or catch yourself shutting down in conflict with your partner or your friends. Instead of advocating for yourself, you may withdraw, go very quiet, or feel the urge to leave the situation, flight. This could be a trauma response in some way from your childhood, where expressing your emotions led to punishment or neglect. Now, a big one that many of us struggle with is not feeling worthy of rest or joy. You may struggle to relax and feel guilty when you take time for yourself. This might be because your younger self learned that love and validation were earned through productivity. And again, you might catch yourself as an adult neglecting your own needs in a relationship, not even knowing what your own needs are, but you just naturally focus on your partner, your friend, or your family while ignoring your own discomfort or exhaustion. This could be again learned from childhood, where you had to be hyper aware of those around you and their moods to stay safe or loved. So many of these wounds that come out in adulthood have stemmed from us desperately wanting to stay safe or loved as a child. And recognizing these patterns is the first step. When they arise, pause and ask yourself, is this my present adult self responding? Or is this a younger, wounded part of me reacting in the same way I did when I was younger? It can be quite confronting in that moment. Then offer yourself kindness, reassurance, reminding yourself that you are safe now in this moment. In everyday examples, we might abandon ourselves by saying yes when actually you really wanted to say no. Minimizing your feelings because you just don't want to be a burden. Or, as I said before, over functioning in relationships while neglecting your own needs. You may stay in situations that deplete you out of fear of being alone or rejected. You struggle to make decisions without seeking approval from others. And this all ends up with you feeling so incredibly disconnected from your own desires, your own dreams, and your own wants. And the thing is, these patterns can be subtle, but over time, they create this deep feeling of emptiness and disconnection from self. But with all of these, there is healing available to you. I've put together 6 steps that I think may help you come back to yourself. The first one, as I'm sure so many of you will be aware, is self-awareness. Begin noticing the moments when you silence your own voice or dismiss your needs. Journaling can be helpful here. Where am I not showing up for myself? Check in with yourself regularly. I remember my therapist saying to me years ago, each week when we first met, Helen, what's come up for you this week? And it's such a brilliant question because we can so often go through our weeks on autopilot, not stopping to think about, actually, how have I felt? What's come in? What's caused a reaction? Catch those moments. The next step I'd like you to move towards is a beautiful step we use in therapy called reparenting. Think of your younger self, the one who learned to abandon their needs in order to belong, to feel safe, to feel loved. What did they need to hear? What kind of support and love were they craving? Can you speak to yourself with that same tenderness, gentleness now? I'm going to share another solo episode soon with more on reparenting because I think there's so much more that I could say that I think you'd enjoy. And then I want you to move towards honoring your needs. Now, this can sound really daunting for someone who hasn't ever thought about their needs before. So start small. Start even smaller. Choose one area where you can show up for yourself differently this week. Maybe it's saying no to something that really drains you. Or maybe it's giving yourself permission to rest without guilt, even if just for 5 minutes. Let's start small. If making decisions for yourself feels difficult, let's concentrate on those smallest steps. Let's think about choosing what you'd like to eat, choosing what music you'd like to listen to, or choosing something that feels good for you in that moment. And then step 4, trusting your intuition. Again, I'm going to do another solo episode on this soon because I think intuition is a deeply misunderstood subject that I'd love to help you more with. Your intuition has always been there. It's part of your nervous system survival response. It's there, even if you've been ignoring it. So I invite you to start gently listening again. Make some space for solitude, stillness, reflection. One way to do this is through a body scan. There's lots available on YouTube. Contact me if you'd like to know my favourites. Pay attention to how your body reacts to certain choices. What sensations do you notice inside? Does a situation make your stomach tense? Your shoulders rise up to your ears? Does saying yes to something feel like relief? Or does it make you dread it? Your body often knows the truth before your mind does. Then I'd like to invite you to set boundaries with compassion. This is a really crucial part of healing from self-abandonment. It's a crucial part in learning to say no when something doesn't align with your well-being. As I always say, it's okay to disappoint others if it means staying true to yourself. Their reaction is not your responsibility. And of course, we are talking here about setting boundaries with kindness. Start with simple phrases like, I really appreciate the invitation, but I need some rest today. Or, that just doesn't feel right for me at the moment. Boundaries are not walls. They are these gentle pathways that lead us back to ourselves, and they strengthen relationships with others so that we can show up from a place where we feel resourced and not drained. And then the final step is where I invite you to create rituals of self-connection. This could be activities that just bring you back to yourself. It could be starting a ritual of morning journaling. It could be an evening walk. It could be listening to your favorite podcast, music that soothes you, or simply sitting in silence with a hand on your heart. These small moments accumulate and they reinforce the message that you matter too. So taking these steps into consideration, I wanted to now answer some of your questions you had on self-abandonment. The first one I chose was, how do I start to reclaim myself again after losing myself in an unhealthy relationship? Lots of you did respond with questions around finding yourself after unhealthy relationships. So I think reclaiming yourself after any unhealthy relationship is a process of self-compassion, rediscovery, and intentional healing. Acknowledge the ways in which you may have abandoned yourself without judgment, whether that was you suppressing your needs, ignoring your dreams, or living in constant survival mode. Then begin reconnecting with yourself in small but meaningful ways. Start by tuning into that inner voice. Start by journaling. Start by thinking about what your preferences are, your values, your passions. Ask yourself, what do I truly enjoy? What makes me feel alive? When was the last time you asked yourself those questions? Actually, that's a reminder for many of us. I always remember hearing Oprah Winfrey talking once and saying, so often what ignites us back to ourselves when we feel lost is, what did we love doing when we were younger? Maybe that's the question to ask yourself now. Rebuilding your sense of self here means making decisions for you. You may have not done that for a very long time. Again, let's go small. What do you want to eat tonight? How do you want to spend your free time at the weekend? And so importantly, who do you want to be around? Surround yourself with those people who respect you, who inspire you, who lift you up. Practice self-compassion. Healing is never about blaming yourself for the past, but about choosing moment by moment, again and again, to show up for yourself in the present. Be patient. Healing is never about rushing into the next chapter, but about coming home to yourself, your needs, your desires, and your worth. Another question I got was, how do I self-soothe when self-abandoning wounds arise? I love this because it really felt to me that someone was really beginning to understand that self-abandonment was a wounded part. And it is, as I've said through this podcast. When self-abandonment wounds surface, it can feel incredibly overwhelming. But the key is to meet yourself here with presence rather than avoidance. I'm going to say that again because it's so key. Meet yourself with presence rather than avoidance. Self-soothing begins with awareness. Pause and notice when you feel triggered. Instead of criticizing yourself for feeling needy, anxious, unworthy, offer yourself understanding. This is an old wound. I'm safe now. Physically grounding yourself can be helpful here too. One of my favorite exercises is to place a hand on my heart. Take a deep breath in, or you could even wrap your hands around your favorite warm drink, or even a blanket. You can use affirmations. I'm here for myself. My needs matter. I am safe in my own presence. Try slow, mindful movements like stretching, listening to calming music, anything that helps give movement to the emotions and release them from feeling stuck within your nervous system. Self-soothing is about proving to yourself again and again that you will not leave yourself behind anymore. Another question I got was, I grew up with a narcissistic mother and I am so used to self-abandoning. How can I break the cycle? Now, growing up with a narcissistic parent often teaches you that your needs, emotions, and identity must be sacrificed to maintain harmony within the home. Breaking this cycle is possible, but it starts with you recognizing and acknowledging your feelings are real, they are valid, and they are so worthy of acknowledgement. Begin by practicing self-validation. When you feel an emotion come in, instead of dismissing it, pause and acknowledge it. I feel this way, and that's okay. Allow yourself to put your feelings into words to yourself without judgment. And then set boundaries, even small ones, as we've said before. Start with something manageable, maybe expressing a preference instead of automatically asking others. Take space when you need it. It might, of course, feel unnatural at first, but boundaries are a way of affirming your right to exist as your own person, and I promise they become easier and easier with practice. Inner child work can also be incredibly helpful. Maybe visualize your younger self and ask, what did I need to hear? What kind of support did I long for? Then actively give that to yourself in the present. And then work intentionally to seek relationships that allow you to express your true self without fear. I can't say this enough. Healing from self-abandonment is about choosing you again and again to stand by yourself, because you are worthy of your own love and care. So I wanted to end this episode with a very short visualization meditation that I hope will really help consolidate some of the things that I've gone through today. So firstly, take a deep breath in and exhale slowly. Do another one of those. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Now find a comfortable position. This can be sitting or lying down, and if it's safe to do so, gently close your eyes. Begin by noticing your breath. There's nothing to change here, nothing to fix. Just to be here, observing the natural rhythm of your breathing. With each inhale, imagine drawing in warmth and self-compassion. With each exhale, let go of any tension or self-judgment. Stay here for a moment longer. Now bring to mind a younger version of yourself, perhaps as a child or a teenager. See them standing before you. Your adult self, looking at your younger self. Can you notice their expression, their posture? What do they need from you right now? Perhaps reassurance, love, safety. Now imagine gently kneeling down beside them, placing a hand tenderly on their shoulder. And with your inner voice, try saying to them, "You are seen. I see you. You are enough. I am always here." Now I want you to feel these words sinking in, filling every space within you. Imagine wrapping this younger version of you in a warm, radiant hug. A hug of deep acceptance, of unconditional belonging. Stay here for a few breaths, soaking in this feeling of safety, knowing that at any time you can bring this feeling of safety back to that younger part of yourself. Breathe in here. Exhale slowly. Now as you gently bring your awareness back to the present, place your hand on your heart. Take in one final deep breath. And as you exhale, whisper to yourself, "I am here for me." And when you feel ready, slowly open your eyes, bringing this feeling of self-connection with you. Self-abandonment can be a really painful pattern, but I hope you know from this podcast episode that healing is always within reach. It starts with those small, consistent acts of self-loyalty, listening to yourself, honouring your needs, and as I've said throughout this episode, choosing yourself again and again, choosing to stand by yourself again and again. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If this episode resonated with you in any way, please share it with someone who might need it too. And if you'd like to continue this conversation, I'm always welcome to you reaching out to me on Instagram. I'm always here. So until next time, be kind to yourself and remember, you matter too.